Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, I have a story that will leave you questioning everything about love, loyalty, and how far a mother's sacrifice can really go. Imagine this: you dedicate your entire life to raising your only son. You give up your dreams, your marriage, your happiness, all to give him a better future. And when life finally knocks you down, when you lose everything, your own son kicks you out like you're nothing. But what he didn't know was that his mother had a secret. A secret so powerful it would flip the entire story upside down. Because she wasn't the helpless woman he thought she was. Behind her quiet, humble smile, she was a millionaire. And she was about to show them all what happens when you betray the wrong person. This is the unbelievable story of Revenge Amanda. The mother who gave everything, lost everything, and then came back stronger than anyone could ever imagine. So grab a coffee, sit back, because what you're about to hear is not just a story, it's a lesson. Let's begin. For 30 long years, Amanda gave up everything she had for one person. Her son, Ethan. She wasn't born into wealth. She didn't grow up with a silver spoon or a family name that opened doors. No, Amanda was just an ordinary woman who worked harder than anyone else around her, scraping by, sacrificing day after day, all to give her son a better life. She worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs at a time. While other people were sleeping, Amanda was folding sheets in a hotel laundry room, cleaning strangers' homes, waiting tables at midnight diners. She skipped meals just so Ethan could have enough to eat. She passed on new clothes, vacations, friendships, even love, because everything she had, every dollar she earned, every breath she took was poured into raising her boy. Amanda wasn't just a mother. She was a nurse when Ethan was sick. She was a tutor when he struggled in school. She was a shield when the world was too harsh. She stood in the background like a shadow, holding his life together, never asking for anything in return. And when Ethan got older, when he fell in love and married Nicole, a woman from a family that always looked down on Amanda, she didn't complain. She kept working. She kept supporting. She paid off their mortgage. She sacrificed her own retirement so Ethan and Nicole wouldn't struggle. She gave up her own happiness so they could build theirs. But one day everything changed. Amanda came home exhausted, her hands shaking after a long shift, and finally told Ethan the truth. She had lost her job. After 30 years of breaking her back, she couldn't do it anymore. She needed to rest. You'd think her son would have hugged her. You'd think he would have thanked her, comforted her, told her it was finally her time to breathe. But instead he kicked her out. He called her useless, a burden, a parasite living off their hard-earned money. He didn't ask how she was feeling. He didn't offer her a place to stay. He slammed the door and told her to figure her life out, alone. That was the day something inside Amanda snapped. Because what Ethan didn't know, what he and Nicole and their snobbish family had never even bothered to imagine, was that Amanda wasn't the weak, helpless woman they thought she was. While they mocked her, looked down on her, treated her like an unpaid servant, Amanda had been quietly carrying a secret worth millions. You see, the woman Amanda worked for all those years, her late employer, had seen something in Amanda no one else did. She recognized her loyalty, her sacrifice, her unwavering heart. And when she passed away, she left Amanda everything. An $8 million fortune. Enough to change her life forever. Amanda never told anyone. She never bragged. She never rubbed it in their faces. But now, after being betrayed by the very son she had given everything to, she wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. Because Amanda wasn't just going to walk away. She was going to show them all what it looked like when the woman you trampled on rises higher than you ever dreamed. She was about to turn her heartbreak into power. This is the story of how a mother gave everything, lost everything, and came back stronger than anyone could imagine. And trust me, you won't believe how far she went to teach them the lesson they would never forget. The evening Amanda decided to tell her son the truth, she walked through the front door carrying more than just her suitcase. She carried 30 years of exhaustion, heartbreak, and silent sacrifice. She hadn't even taken off her coat when she softly said, "Ethan, I won't be working for Catherine anymore." Before she could explain, before she could tell him why, Ethan's face darkened. His jaw clenched, his eyes narrowed, and the warmth drained from his expression like someone had flipped a switch. He didn't ask if she was okay. He didn't ask what happened. Instead, he snapped, "Why would you quit? That job was paying $8,000 a month. What are you going to do now? Just sit here and freeload? Amanda froze. Those words, sharp, cold, ungrateful, cut deeper than any knife ever could. She had spent decades building a life so that Ethan would never have to hear words like that from anyone else. But now they were coming from her own son. She tried to soften the blow, tried to explain. I thought maybe I could finally come home and help you and Nicole. Didn't you say she's planning to have a baby? I could take care of her during the pregnancy, help with the baby when it comes. But before the words were even out of her mouth, Nicole walked in from the kitchen, her arms crossed, her lips curled into a smirk. Postpartum recovery requires professional care, she said flatly. You used to be a housekeeper. What would you know about that? And just like that, Amanda's offer of love, of help, of being there for them, not as a worker but as a mother, was thrown back in her face. Nicole's mother, Susan, chimed in without missing a beat, her voice dripping with condescension. Taking care of a newborn isn't just about diapers and bottles, Amanda. It's a science. You need actual training for that. Their words danced around the room like venom, rehearsed, practiced, like they had already decided Amanda was useless before she even stepped through the door. But the worst part wasn't their snide comments. It was the next thing they said. Well, Susan sighed dramatically, if you're not going to work anymore, you'll need to cover the cost of the nanny and the baby nurse. I'll take care of the hiring, of course. Amanda's heart dropped. That one sentence told her everything she needed to know. They didn't care about her being there. They didn't care about her health, her exhaustion, her sacrifices. All they cared about was how much money she could keep funneling into their household. Ethan jumped in immediately, echoing Susan like a parrot. Exactly, Mom. You shouldn't have quit. Our expenses are about to double. You really should keep working. Amanda felt the air leave her lungs. To them, she wasn't family. She was a paycheck, a machine that had kept their lives comfortable for 30 years, and now that she wanted to stop, they treated her like she was broken. She stood there, swallowing her pride, her hands trembling, her voice barely steady. I'm 58. I think it's time for me to rest. Nicole scoffed, rolling her eyes. Rest? You don't even have a pension. What retirement are you talking about? Amanda looked at her son, hoping, just for a moment, that he'd defend her, that he'd remember everything she had done. But instead he said the words that shattered her soul. You can't stop now. You're still in good shape. You can work another 20 years. You should. 20 more years. That was all they saw when they looked at her. Not a mother. Not a person. Just a pair of tired hands and a paycheck. In that moment, Amanda realized the truth. The love she had poured into them had dried up, replaced by entitlement, greed, and cold, calculating expectation. And that realization would change everything. What Ethan, Nicole, and their judgmental, arrogant family didn't know was that Amanda wasn't the broke, desperate woman they thought she was. While they rolled their eyes and accused her of being a burden, while they whispered about how useless and pathetic she had become, Amanda was quietly sitting on a secret that would flip their world upside down. Years ago, when she had nothing but aching hands and a tired back, Amanda took a job that changed everything. She became a live-in housekeeper and assistant for a woman named Catherine Hamilton, a name that, in the circles of the wealthy, carried more weight than gold. But what most people didn't know was that Catherine wasn't just a wealthy woman. She was kind, gentle, and for reasons Amanda still didn't understand at the time, she treated Amanda not like an employee, but like family. Catherine had no children of her own, no relatives she trusted. She lived her life surrounded by people who smiled to her face but sharpened knives behind her back. Except Amanda. Amanda worked for her, yes, but she also listened, cared, protected her when no one else would. And when Catherine's health began to fail, it was Amanda who stayed by her side. Not because she was paid to, but because she couldn't bear to watch another person she loved fade away alone. In those final years, Catherine quietly changed her will. No one knew. No public announcement. No family gathering. Just a few signatures on a stack of papers locked away in her lawyer's office. When Catherine passed away, Amanda discovered what no one else expected. Catherine had left everything to her. An $8 million trust fund. No conditions. No strings attached. A reward not just for loyalty, but for being the one person who had loved her without an agenda. Amanda had every reason to celebrate, to stand tall and announce to the world that the housekeeper they looked down on was now a millionaire. But she didn't, because Amanda knew one thing. Money doesn't reveal who people are. It exposes them. So she kept her secret locked away, close to her chest like a loaded weapon. She wanted to see, when everything was stripped away, when she had nothing left to offer, who would stand by her, not for what she could give but for who she was. And now she had her answer. Ethan had shown his true colors the moment she told him she'd lost her job. Not a flicker of concern. Not a drop of love. He hadn't hesitated to toss her out the door the second she stopped being useful. Nicole and her mother Susan? They had always looked down on Amanda, but now they didn't even pretend to hide it. They treated her like garbage the second the money stopped flowing into their pockets. And Amanda realized something devastating and liberating at the same time. All those years she had worked herself to the bone, sacrificed everything, hoping one day they would appreciate her, hoping one day they would see her as more than just a paycheck. But the truth was they never would. And so while they smirked and sneered and made plans to shove her into an assisted living facility like some unwanted stray, Amanda sat quietly, knowing something they didn't. She wasn't the one who had nothing. They were. They had no love, no loyalty, no soul. And soon, they would learn that the woman they kicked out of their house had more power than they could ever imagine. Because Amanda wasn't done. Not even close. It all came crashing down one rainy afternoon. The moment that broke Amanda's heart beyond repair. After days of tension in the house, Amanda decided to stand her ground. She told Ethan and Nicole once and for all that she wasn't going back to work. That she was done breaking her back to fund their comfortable life while they treated her like a burden. She thought maybe, just maybe, Ethan would understand. That he would see how much she had given, how tired she was. But she was wrong. Ethan's face twisted with rage, red creeping up his neck like a flame. His voice cracked, but not with sadness, with fury. You think you can just stop? You think you get to sit back and let us carry you now? You've been a burden since the day I can remember. Amanda stood frozen, the weight of his words heavier than any suitcase she'd ever packed. You ruined my life, he spat. You left my father, you dragged me into poverty. You made me grow up struggling because of your selfish choices. Everything I am, every failure I've had, is because of you. Nicole didn't say a word. She stood by the door, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line, as if watching the evening news. Amanda's heart shattered right there in that living room. But Ethan wasn't finished. He stormed across the room, kicked over her suitcase, and pointed a shaking finger in her face. You owe me. For the rest of your life you owe me. You think you suffered? That was your choice. No one asked you to ruin your own life. And now you're useless. Dead weight. So get out. Those last two words, get out, echoed through the room like a gunshot. Amanda's hands trembled. Her lips parted but no sound came out. How had it come to this? How had the boy she raised, the child she loved beyond reason, turned into a stranger who could throw her away without hesitation? And that's when the real twist, the deepest cut, revealed itself. Because Ethan didn't know the truth. He wasn't her flesh and blood. He wasn't even her biological son. He had no idea that the woman standing in front of him, the woman he had just disowned and shoved out like garbage, wasn't tied to him by blood, but by choice. Amanda had met Ethan when he was just a baby, abandoned and fragile, left behind by parents who didn't want him. She found him at an orphanage while volunteering, barely breathing, his tiny body scarred by a congenital heart defect. He'd been left in a dumpster like a piece of trash. And Amanda, young, struggling, already married, had looked at that child and made a decision that would change her entire life. She adopted him. Against everyone's advice, against her husband's objections, she took Ethan home. She worked herself to the bone to pay for his surgeries, his medicine, his education. When her husband told her to give him back or walk away, she walked away. She left her marriage, gave up her chance to have a family of her own, just so this little boy could have a chance at life. She never told Ethan. She never wanted him to carry the weight of being unwanted twice, once by his birth parents, and once by a man who refused to raise another man's child. She kept the truth buried deep inside, thinking it would protect him. But now, standing in that living room, suitcase lying open at her feet, her son glaring at her like a stranger, Amanda realized how cruel life could be. She had given up everything for a child who, in the end, didn't even want her. And that was the moment she knew. There was nothing left to save. He had disowned her. But what he didn't know was that she had already let go. And now the next chapter was hers to write. Amanda didn't scream. She didn't beg. She didn't even shed another tear when Ethan slammed the door in her face and told her to get out. Instead, she picked up her suitcase, lifted her chin, and walked away in silence. But as she stepped onto the empty street that night, something inside her shifted. For the first time in decades, she wasn't walking toward someone else's needs. She was walking toward her own. Amanda checked herself into the most exclusive 5-star hotel in the city, the kind of place where the staff greeted her by name, the sheets were silk, and the marble floors shined like mirrors. She walked through that grand lobby with the same calm dignity she had always carried, but now, for the first time, she wasn't there to clean the floors. She was there to stay. And while her son and his wife sat smugly at home, thinking they had finally gotten rid of her, Amanda was already preparing for her next move. The following week, she made an appointment at one of the city's top luxury real estate showrooms. It wasn't just any property, it was the kind of gated villa community people like Nicole and Susan would kill to live in. It was where the elite came to spend millions, where the wealthy paraded their success. Amanda arrived at the showroom alone, dressed simply, no designer labels, no flashing diamonds, just herself. And the second she walked through those glass doors, the whispers started. People glanced at her, sizing her up, wondering why someone like her was even standing there. But no one's reaction was more venomous than Chloe's. Chloe, Nicole's cousin, the woman who had always looked at Amanda like she was gum on her expensive shoe. Chloe worked there as a sales agent, and the moment she saw Amanda, her eyes narrowed with disgust. Well, if it isn't the housekeeper," Chloe sneered, strutting over in her designer heels. "What are you doing here? You do know this is a luxury development, right? The coffee's free, but the houses aren't." Amanda didn't flinch. She simply smiled and said, "I'm here to buy." Chloe laughed, tossing her hair over her shoulder. "Of course you are. Let me guess. You're looking for the staff quarters." The snickers from nearby clients and staff followed, but Amanda kept her gaze steady. "No," she said coolly. "I'm looking for the most expensive villa you've got." Chloe rolled her eyes. "We require financial verification before we waste our time with walk-ins." Without missing a beat, Amanda reached into her bag, pulled out a folder, and handed it to Chloe. Inside were certified bank statements and trust documents, proof of over $8 million in her name. Chloe's face drained of color as she flipped through the papers. The room fell silent. Amanda wasn't finished. She turned to the young assistant who had first greeted her, Monica, a kind-eyed woman who had treated Amanda with simple human decency when no one else did. "I want her to handle my purchase," Amanda said, nodding toward Monica. Chloe stammered, trying to recover. You can't be serious." But the sales manager had already stepped in, his voice sharp now. "Chloe, step aside. Monica, please assist our distinguished client." In less than an hour, Amanda signed the paperwork for not one, but 2 luxury villas, paid in full. No mortgage, no negotiation. As she stood up from the signing table, she turned to Chloe one last time. "Funny how quickly people forget who's cleaning the floors and who's buying the house," she said softly, with a smile that cut sharper than any insult. And in that moment, everyone in the room realized the truth. Amanda wasn't just some housekeeper. She was the woman who had walked through hell and come out the other side holding the keys to everything they had ever wanted. And she was just getting started. Before we dive deeper into what happens next, I want to pause for a second and hear from you. What do you think about Amanda's story so far? Can you imagine dedicating your entire life to someone, only to be tossed aside like you never mattered? Drop a comment below and tell me. Do you think Amanda made the right decision by walking away? Or should she have forgiven her son? I'm reading all your thoughts, and trust me, the story is only about to get crazier from here. Now let's get back to it. A few weeks after Amanda sealed the deal on her 2 luxury villas, she thought she had finally left the past behind her. But fate had one more performance planned, one she didn't see coming. That afternoon, Amanda decided to visit a high-end piano showroom downtown. It wasn't something she'd ever done before. She didn't grow up playing music, but during her years working for Catherine, her late employer, she had learned to love the piano. Catherine had taught her how to play, how to find peace in every note. Now, with her new life beginning, Amanda wanted to bring music back into it. The showroom was grand, filled with glistening black and white keys, polished floors, and the faint sound of classical music playing in the background. Amanda was quietly admiring a Steinway grand piano when the front door swung open, and in walked a familiar voice. Susan, Nicole's mother. The woman who had once looked Amanda straight in the eye and told her she wasn't good enough. And she wasn't alone. She was surrounded by her usual circle of snobbish, well-dressed socialites, their voices sharp, dripping with self-importance. Susan's eyes landed on Amanda like a hawk spotting its prey. A slow, bitter smile crept across her face. Well, look who's here," Susan said loudly enough for everyone in the showroom to hear. "Didn't expect to see you here, Amanda. What are you doing? Dusting the pianos now?" Her friends chuckled behind her like a pack of hyenas. Another woman chimed in, her voice laced with sarcasm. "Maybe she's here to pretend she belongs. I've heard people like her love to sit at expensive instruments just to feel important." Amanda stayed calm, brushing her fingers gently across the piano keys, ignoring their laughter. She had no reason to explain herself to these people anymore. But Susan wasn't done. "You know," she continued loud and condescending, "some people should really learn to stay in their place. You spent your whole life cleaning up after others, Amanda. You don't belong in places like this." The words echoed around the room, and Amanda could feel the glances, the whispers, the unspoken judgment from the other customers and even some of the staff, until one of the sales associates quietly approached her. "Ma'am," he said kindly, "please take your time. Feel free to try out any piano. That's why they're here." Amanda nodded, her smile soft but sharp as a blade. She sat down at the grand piano she'd been eyeing and began to play. The room grew quiet. Her fingers moved effortlessly over the keys, pouring emotion into every note. Moonlight Sonata filled the air, smooth and haunting. It wasn't just music, it was a lifetime of heartbreak, sacrifice, betrayal, and strength poured into sound. By the time she finished, the showroom was silent. Even Susan's little clique couldn't hide their surprise. But before they could find something cruel to say, Amanda stood up and turned to the sales associate. "I'll take this one," she said casually, pointing at the grand piano. The associate blinked. "Ma'am, that's our finest model. $155,000. Amanda didn't hesitate. "Perfect. Let's finalize the purchase." Gasps echoed around the room. The same people who had laughed at her moments ago now stood frozen, their faces pale, their mouths slightly open. The sales associate smiled wide, almost in disbelief. "Of course, ma'am. Right this way." As Amanda walked past Susan and her stunned friends, she glanced at them one last time, her voice calm, almost sweet. "Funny thing," she said, "you all spent so much time teaching me where I belong. But it looks like you never really knew." And with that, she signed the paperwork without blinking, left the showroom with a new grand piano, and a lesson etched into the hearts of everyone who witnessed her rise. The maid they once mocked had become the woman they could never measure up to. Amanda thought that once she walked away, once she reclaimed her life and left her ungrateful son behind, it would finally be over. She thought the silence would bring her peace. But Ethan wasn't done. When he realized she was serious, that she wasn't coming back, wasn't answering his calls, wasn't sending money, he didn't reflect. He didn't apologize. He didn't even wonder how things had gotten so far. Instead, he did what selfish people always do when they lose control. He played the victim. It started quietly at first. Amanda received a few missed calls from unfamiliar numbers, a few emails filled with long, rambling accusations and thinly veiled demands. She ignored them. She had learned by now that Ethan wasn't reaching out of love, he wanted something. But then, one morning, Amanda's phone lit up with a message from Monica, the young woman who had helped her buy the villas. "Amanda, have you seen what's happening online?" Amanda's stomach dropped. Ethan had started a live stream channel on one of the largest social media platforms. The title of his channel was clear and direct: "My mother abandoned me," and his face, plastered across the thumbnail, looked pitiful. Eyes red, lips trembling. chin quivering like a lost little boy. Amanda clicked the link. The stream was live. Ethan sat in front of the camera in a dimly lit room, looking disheveled, pale, desperate. His voice cracked as he spoke, but his words were carefully chosen. "She left me," he said to the thousands of viewers tuning in. "My own mother. After everything I've done to make her proud, after I worked so hard to build a family, she cut me off. Like I was nothing." He wiped away fake tears and continued, painting himself as the abandoned son, the victim of a cruel, selfish mother who cared more about money than love. He told stories, half-truths twisted into lies. He claimed Amanda had walked away from him when he needed her most, that she had chosen luxury over family, that she had no heart, no soul, no maternal instinct left. And people listened. Some believed him. The comments section was a flood of sympathy and outrage. "She's heartless. No real mother would do that. He looks broken. Poor guy." But not everyone was convinced. Some viewers questioned his story. "Where's her side of the story? Why are you airing this online instead of talking to her? Something doesn't add up." Still, the damage had begun. Ethan's follower count skyrocketed. He started selling merch, t-shirts, mugs with quotes like "abandoned but unbroken." Donations poured in from people who wanted to support the poor, heartbroken son betrayed by the woman who raised him. Amanda watched it unfold, stunned by how easily he manipulated strangers who didn't know the truth. How quickly he turned himself into a martyr, preying on the emotions of people who wanted to believe in victims and villains. And in every stream his story grew more dramatic, more embellished. "She threw me out like trash. She chose money over family. She never loved me." What Ethan didn't know, what none of his new followers knew, was that Amanda was watching. Every lie, every tear, every carefully crafted performance. And she wasn't angry. Not yet. She was patient. Because when the truth finally came out, it wasn't just going to end his pity party. It was going to destroy everything he had built. Amanda stayed silent longer than most people would. She watched Ethan's live stream, saw him cry on camera, watched as strangers sent him donations and heartfelt messages, calling her heartless, calling her a monster. But Amanda knew something that Ethan and his followers didn't. She wasn't powerless anymore. So one night, while Ethan was busy performing for his audience, Amanda quietly opened an account of her own. She titled her channel simply, "The Truth About Ethan." And when she hit that go live button, she wasn't nervous. She wasn't angry. She was ready. The moment her stream began, people poured in. Some were curious. Some were skeptics. Many were fans of Ethan, ready to tear her apart. She greeted them calmly, her voice steady, her face composed. "Good evening," Amanda began. "I know many of you have heard one side of this story. You've seen the tears, the live streams, the claims that I abandoned my son. But tonight, I'm here to tell you the truth." The chat exploded instantly. Some people mocked her. Others demanded answers. She continued without flinching. "Ethan is not my biological son," she said. "I met him when he was barely a year old, abandoned in a dumpster with a severe heart defect. His birth parents left him to die." The comments section froze. The energy shifted. Amanda kept going. "I was a young woman back then, married, struggling, but when I saw that child, I couldn't turn away. I adopted him. I gave up my marriage for him. My husband didn't want to raise a child that wasn't his, so I walked away. Chose Ethan over everything." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "For 30 years I worked day and night. I cleaned homes, waited tables, worked as a live-in assistant, just so he could survive. I paid for his surgeries. I put him through school. I bought him a home with my savings." Amanda's voice hardened slightly. "And how did he repay me? The moment I stopped working, he threw me out, called me a burden, accused me of ruining his life." Then, without warning, she pulled up documents on screen. First, the official adoption papers stamped and signed, showing that Ethan was legally her adopted son. Then she displayed the trust documents from her late employer, proof of the $8 million she had inherited. Proof that she was never after Ethan's money, because she had her own. The comments section exploded. "Is this real? She saved him. Why didn't he ever mention this?" But Amanda wasn't finished. Next, she played an audio recording. Ethan's voice, clear and cold, plotting with Nicole to manipulate her, to force her to keep working, even suggesting she move in with an elderly man as a live-in servant so they could keep the money flowing. The chat turned savage. The narrative had flipped. The boy who had painted himself as the victim was now exposed as a liar, a manipulator, an ungrateful son who had drained the woman who saved his life. Within hours, the backlash began. Ethan's comments section flooded with outrage. His donations dried up. His followers vanished overnight. People demanded he apologize, that he shut down his channel. Some called him a disgrace. Others called him something worse. Amanda didn't celebrate. She didn't smile. This wasn't revenge. This was truth. And the truth had finally done what she no longer needed to do. It stripped Ethan of the lies he had built and left him standing alone in the mess he created. The internet storm didn't fade overnight. After Amanda exposed the truth on her live stream, Ethan's channel was suspended. His followers abandoned him, disgusted by how he exploited the woman who once saved his life. But Amanda didn't care about public sympathy. She wanted justice. She called her attorney and built a case, documenting every lie and defamatory word Ethan had spread. When they took him to court, Ethan tried to play the victim. He cried, begged, and claimed he was misunderstood, but the evidence was undeniable. The judge ruled in Amanda's favor. Ethan was found guilty of defamation, harassment, and financial abuse. He was ordered to pay damages, cover legal fees, and remove all false content. But Amanda didn't stop there. She reclaimed the house she had paid for, which Ethan and Nicole once claimed as theirs. Her lawyers traced every transaction back to her. After months of legal battle, the court ruled the house rightfully belonged to Amanda. The fallout continued. Nicole, after seeing the truth in court, quietly filed for divorce. No fight, no drama, just a signature and silence. She left Ethan to face the wreckage alone. Amanda didn't need revenge. She didn't need to see him fall. She had already won. For the first time in her life, she was free from manipulation, from ungrateful people, from years of sacrifice. She sold the villa she once bought out of heartbreak and walked away, not just with money but with peace. Amanda moved to a quiet lakeside town, bought a simple home, and filled her days with gardening, painting, and the calm she had always deserved. When people asked if she regretted everything, Amanda smiled and said no. She never regretted saving Ethan, only that it took her too long to learn. Kindness without boundaries is self-destruction. But now, in this second half of her life, she had finally become something more than a mother, more than a housekeeper, more than a giver who never received. She became a woman who finally lived for herself. And in the peace of that lakeside town, Amanda discovered the life she had always deserved. And that's where Amanda's story comes to an end, but not without a powerful lesson. Sometimes the people we sacrifice everything for are the very ones who will hurt us the most. But the real strength isn't in how much you give. It's in knowing when to stop giving to those who only take. Amanda's journey reminds us that kindness should never come at the cost of your own dignity and peace. Thank you so much for staying with me until the end of this incredible story. Now I want to hear from you. What did you feel while listening to Amanda's journey? What lesson did this story leave you with? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one of them. And if this story touched you, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next unforgettable story I'll be sharing soon. Until then, take care and remember, sometimes walking away is the most powerful thing you can do.